Psychotoxin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest with us here today. I have with us indie horror author TJ Price, and he is brand new to the Psychotoxin Press group with his new banner of books called the Mandragora Books. TJ, welcome to the Horror Room.
Hey Travis, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to have you on, man. So tell us a little bit about the Mandragora Books.
So what I'm going to try to do with this imprint is focus on fiction that's a little bit more experimental. Looking for works that are going to have an emphasis on prose styling. I'm going to be looking for underrepresented and overlooked voices. I'm going to be looking for like weird fiction more so than like straight up genre stuff. But I'm a horror aficionado as much as the next person, so I'm really excited to see what I find out there. I'm kind of thinking of myself as like just a miner, I'm just down in the tunnels, I'm just digging away, maybe I'll hit a mother lode, maybe not. We'll see what happens.
Amazing. Now it's an exciting time right now in horror because there's so many new creators and film authors, just creators in general, with brand new ideas out. Has there been a time that there have been so many new creators? I think it's kind of been easier also too for creators to get their names out there.
I think so. I think, due to the proliferation of technology, due to the way that we communicate with one another nowadays, I do think that there is a sort of surge of creative minds. And, that's kind of what Chris at Psychotoxin is doing I've really only met him once or twice at this point, but I love his passion and his enthusiasm for community and really bringing people together to, just talk about and share about the things that they like. And, I'm excited to get things started. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Chris is doing a great job. Chris, Rebecca, that whole team over at Psychotoxin Press. And one of the things they're also doing is, they're talking to indie horror writers and give them advice and ideas on some of the struggles that they're running into. So now, what are some struggles that you are running into right now, where you're seeing that indie horror writers are running into?
I think any indie artist is going to run into some struggles just due to the nature of being on their own. Independent, being, on their own, not necessarily solitary, but when you don't have the backing of a big press or something like that, you have a lot more work to do yourself to promote and, market and do all of that sort of thing. So I think that is a big struggle for people in general, which is another reason why I'm excited to be working with Psychotoxin, because they have a lot of that built in. So I'm very excited to kind of focus more on the editing portion and the discovery portion of the imprint, because that's what I'm good at. So I'm hoping to pick up the other stuff along the way, but we'll see how that goes.
Now, being a editor and working on the editing side, what are some issues? I've seen, you probably have seen it too. I've seen a lot of indie writers who don't go through the editing process or don't have an editor look at the work. And do you think that's something that is big right now that you've run into, or do you think that's something that hopefully will change over time?
I think when it comes to editing, I try not to think of myself as like the end all be all of, a piece. I think that when it comes to editing, there's a certain resonance and rapport that's involved. Like if I'm going to pick up someone's work, I'm not going to, quote, edit it unless I've established a relationship with that writer and say, hey, I really like this story. I really like what you're doing. I really enjoy your work. Would you be open to some feedback? I would never want to assume that my viewpoint, however much experience I have, and, doesn't matter. What matters is what the writer is trying to accomplish. So for me, editing is more like a midwifing. Like I'm just helping to bring this creation into the world. You know what I mean? Like it's not my creation per se, but what I'm doing is using my experience with reading and my experience with writing and creating and doing things the way that I know I like, and then bringing my feedback to that author and saying things like, hey, I thought that this simile didn't work as well as it could have. I felt like the image that you used in the allegory didn't align well with the verb choice that you made in this sentence. Things like that on a granular level. So when it comes to things like that, I feel like, yes, that's probably true. I don't think that people think about the prose of the story on such a granular level all the time, because often that's not something that happens until the very end of the process, where someone's actually done with the story, done with the narration, they've got everything the way they want it. But I'm the kind of person that am painstaking about when I write. Like, I will go back to the last sentence that I wrote and switch words around and move a comma here or there as I go, which I'm not saying everyone should do that either, because it's not easy to do it that way. But anyway, I've gotten so far away from your question.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're hitting right ahead. Now, what got you into writing?
I've been writing for a really long time. Only very recently have I been trying to submit and get published and things like that. But I've been playing with words since I was like a kid. So it's been a long journey. I enjoy it probably more than anything else in the world. I love words. I love the sound of words. I love the different things you can do with words. There's just so much you can do with the written word, and I feel like the potential there is like astronomical, and it's so much fun.
I agree. And I am enjoying the abundance of indie writers that are coming out right now. There's some great young, fresh minds coming out, and they put some good stuff out. Unfortunately, one thing that I've seen, and that's why, I do with my channel, I try to shine a spotlight on them. But like a lot of great young or new indie writers are, like you were saying, they're not getting that spotlight. They're not getting people in front of the books in front of people. What are some advice that you could give to some new indie writers?
Keep trying. Just because, it's not connecting with people doesn't mean that what you're working on isn't, good. It just means that either you haven't hit the right audience yet, or, maybe you just need more practice. I mean, I don't know. I really cannot pretend to be in a good place to give people advice to break into publishing. Unfortunately, it really is just a matter of perseverance, I think. I don't even submit as often as I used to. I used to be the kind of person that would just sit down and, write out a, 3,000, 4,000 word story and then start hitting all the markets, get that submission grinder up, get that, check off this magazine and this publication, and there's that rejection, and it took this many days. And honestly, all of that, a lot of people thrive on that. Don't get me wrong. And I think that that's great. Whatever motivates you, whatever moves you to write, if it's, constant stream of rejections, good for you. Go for it. For me, that didn't work. I don't submit to places as often as I should, or maybe as often as I could, most of the time because I feel like the stuff that I'm working on and the themes that I'm interested in and what I'm working with are a little bit different than I think a lot of the mainstream publications are looking for, especially in the horror genre. I feel like the horror genre has its tropes, it has its toys, it has its toolbox, and it's, people like to play in that area, and that's fun and that's great. But I feel like a lot of the time, the stuff that I'm working on is a little bit more towards like the weird side, or stuff that's like a little bit more ambiguous, maybe strays a little bit more into, I don't want to say poetry, but a lot of the stuff that I write is very heavily soaked in like imagery and like weird wordplay and metatextual stuff. And I have discovered through, the years that isn't necessarily always going to hit with the audience out there. And that's okay. I have learned to kind of come to terms with that. As long as what I'm doing satisfies me, and I feel happy with what I've created, which I have to tell you is not all that often. I have astronomically high standards for my own work. It's really bad. But as long as I'm at least somewhat pleased with what I've done, I I'm happy with it. I hopefully after I die, I will become posthumously famous, and everyone will be like, "Hey,
Yes.
why wasn't this guy ever good like read in his lifetime?" And maybe I'll leave like a cryptic clue on my headstone after I'm gone, and people can follow the clue from the headstone to the library to the strange old man that I've appointed as my future archivist who has all of my notebooks in a crumbling box. Who knows? It could be fun.
But isn't it hard not to go mainstream, or is it hard not to be like, fuck it, this has been proven, this is what everybody's doing, this is what people like? I mean, is it hard to be your own person and be different?
No, I don't think it's hard. What I think is hard is what do I think is hard? I don't even know where I was going with that, to be completely honest. I don't think it's hard to be yourself. I think when you're just starting out, or at least when I was just starting out, I found myself very, very influenced by a lot of the writers that I read. Um, in fact, I was actually just having a conversation with a friend of mine who is more of like a novel writer, more of a novella writer, and that kind of thing. And I am more of a short fiction writer. And when I say short, I mean like microfiction, flash fiction. Like we get to like 1,500 words, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. This is it. It's over.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Done. It's good. We're happy now. But that is also because I read almost exclusively short fiction these days. I don't know why that happened. It's just kind of something that I started with. I started reading with Michael Weehunt's Greener Pastures and Nathan Ballinger's North American Lake Monsters. Those were the first two collections of horror fiction that I read that were short stories back in 2020, and they were, I would say, instrumental to my interest in more short fiction and horror fiction in general. I read the stories and I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. This is beautiful. This is amazing. How did they do this? I can't wait to do this. And so, yeah, a lot of the stories that I wrote in the very beginning were, I wouldn't say derivative per se, but they were reflective of the writers that I really admired. And I feel like it does take some time, and I don't even know if I've bridged that gap yet, but it does take some time to cultivate your own authorial voice in the world. So I don't think it's necessarily hard to be yourself, but I think it might be hard to discover who you are. If
As a creator.
Yeah.
Okay. But all right, so and you're looking for writers right now. So you're looking for writers. So have you ran across anything that you're like, oh shit, this is too extreme? Or is there nothing that's too extreme?
I'm not exactly sure. Well, when it comes to extreme, there's a lot of different ways I guess I could look at that. When I think of like the genre classification of quote unquote extreme horror, that's generally not my kind of thing. I definitely have read stuff that is, violent. I've read stuff that's gory. But if that doesn't have some kind of like allegorical or thematic underpinning to it, it's not going to be my cup of tea, because I need a little bit more going on. I need that gore, that violence. I need that to be indicative of something else. I need a resonance to sort of underlie the reason for that, and that's just personal preference. But yeah, when it comes to extreme, if it's just kind of cringe-inducing, then I generally tend to avoid it.
So how can, if there was a writer out there who wanted to submit their work, how would they submit their work to you?
Well, I'm still in the process of getting everything all set up and started, so I'm hoping to eventually have more of a presence, out there in the digital world and social media. So hopefully there'll be a website, which I'm kind of working on. There'll be an email, and I'll be posting, when I'm open for people to send their stuff in. Currently, I have a list of potential future projects that I'm already kind of working on. One of them is top secret. Unfortunately, I can't talk about it yet, but I'm very excited about it. And then I have ideas for a couple more projects that I'd like to do under the press banner, which one of them will probably be an anthology of interrelated stories. I won't talk too much about that yet, but when I do open up for submissions, I will, be very loud about it, and it'll be very exciting.
Now, working with Psychotoxin Press, I mean, isn't it amazing in the indie horror that to be able to have network, to have that support system, to have backing? I mean, it's one thing. I mean, I'm new to the indie horror, but I'm just so shocked at how, for the most part, how pleasant everyone is, how open and willing they are to help and guide and uplift each other.
I agree, and it's funny because I think that very fact is often remarked upon in the indie horror scene. I feel like a lot of people often comment on, wow, these guys who like serial killers and blood and scary clowns, like they're like the nicest people I've ever met, as if it's a contradiction in terms. But like my argument for that is horror writers are investigating probably the most universal reaction and emotion that we have. I mean, fear. Fear is universal. Everyone at some point in their life, no matter who they are, no matter how privileged they are, no matter what kind of life they've led, has been afraid. There is nobody in the world who has never been afraid. And that universality, I think, is what really lies at the heart of the horror community. And I think that investigation is what ties us together. And I think that's kind of beautiful.
I agree. So what's your biggest fear, TJ? I'm going to tell you mine. Heights. I am terrified of heights. Like, I can't get on a ladder. I can't get on a roof. I can't get on roller coasters. I am absolutely terrified of heights.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good one. I see, for me, it's not heights so much as what might happen at the top. It's there's a really great, maybe you've seen it. It's an indie horror film called Session 9.
Yes.
You've seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
I watched that movie a very long time ago, and I had it on DVD, and the DVD actually came with a bonus feature, which was an interview with the actor Peter Mullen, the lead character the lead actor in that movie. And the movie itself takes place at Danvers Mental Asylum, which has since been torn down and turned into condos, as is the way of things. But when they filmed it, it was still there. It was abandoned, but they filmed it on site. And so obviously there was a lot of like spooky going on. But the actor Peter Mullen tells this story about how when they were filming one day, he was up on the roof and the cameras had stopped rolling for a moment, and he heard like in his ear this little voice going, "Peter, Peter." And he's like, "What is that voice? What is going on?" It's like, "Jump, jump." And in the interview, he talks about how he was so chilled by this because he didn't know where the voice was coming from. It could have been coming from inside of him. It could have been coming from outside of him. It could have been a ghost. It could have been who knows what. And then he turns to the camera and he says, "That's what madness is. Madness is extreme curiosity." That's my biggest fear, is that I will cross that line. I will be unable to control myself and be so curious about what might happen if I just did. Yeah, what if I jumped? It's not that far down. But that rationalizing is what's scary. Like, you can't trust yourself sometimes in these moments of like flux of like psychic attack or whatever it is that's happening. Like, my greatest fear is myself.
That's a real fear.
Yeah,
that is a real fear. So we're talking about horror movies. What were some horror movies that inspire you over the years?
The biggest one has to be the Blair Witch Project.
I love the Blair Witch Project. Love it. Love it.
I never got a chance to see it in the theaters, which will be one of my life's greatest regrets, I think. But where I did see it for the first time was in the basement of my childhood home, which is surrounded by acres and acres and acres of woods. And it was remarkably immersive for just a person who was sitting in a basement watching this like insanity unfold on the television. And I remember standing up at the end of it and like feeling sick because I was nauseated by the shaky cam.
The shaky,
I was like, whoa, okay, so I got a little bit of motion sickness here. But the thing that I love the most about that movie is how much it omits and how much it leaves to the viewer's imagination. Again, it's like, how do you yourself, as a viewer, as a consumer of horror, how much do you bring of yourself to what you're watching? How much do you interpret what's going on? Like, what are they seeing that you can't see? What is causing the noise that you can only hear, but you can't see the source of? It's that sort of thing that I love the most. If you trust me enough to let me create my own stuff around the edges, that's the kind of thing I like.
Yeah, because I remember watching that movie. I want to say I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and I went to Walmart and bought it on VHS because I heard, you know what I mean? Back then, it was the website, it was out, and it was so much, there was so much news about this movie. Like, is this real? Was it fake? And it was this indie movie that came out of nowhere. It was number 2 in the box office. And I was like, let me see what this movie is. I remember watching it. I was home alone. I popped it in. My mom was at work. And I popped it in the VCR, lights out. And the movie scared the shit out of me. But it literally scared the shit out of me. And it was nothing really in that movie that was scary. But it was the imagination. Like, what are they running for? What is this? Why is he standing at the corner at the end? Like, that was the most freakiest scene in a horror movie. Him standing in a corner like that with no explanation.
I agree. And I think that what's really, really great about that moment for me is that it requires the viewer to have paid attention in the earlier parts of the movie, because if you had, then you would see the parallel and you would understand why they were showing that particular instance, why he was standing in the corner, because of the story of the children earlier, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I like that. And I like a movie that's smart enough to know when the viewer is being smart to, like, you know, watch it.
Yes.
That didn't make any sense at all. I'm so sorry.
No,
you know what I mean? Like, I like it when a movie trusts a viewer.
But so many people have so much hate towards that movie. And I never understood why. Like, oh, it was stupid. It was stupid. No, it is, to me, I mean, it's the pioneer for found footage horror. It was the first real found footage horror to come out. Some people might say, oh, it was something before that. No, it was, I mean, in a modern age, it was the first modern age found footage horror. And that movie definitely scared the shit out of me. It really did. It's
such a great film. Honestly, I haven't seen it in so long. I should really go back and watch it again. But there is I guess it's a short story. It might actually be technically classified as a novella. The story Styx by Carl Edward Wagner. I don't know if you are familiar with it or have read it, but it has a lot of very striking similarities to some of the plot elements of the Blair Witch Project. I highly recommend his collection, which, my God, the title of it is completely escaping me right now. Carl Edward Wagner, maybe In a Lonely Place, something like that. Anyway, fantastic book. It was released, reprinted, actually, by Valancourt Books, and they do incredible work with restoring and reprinting, like, old masters from, you know, the 80s, even from before that, and also international authors as well. Nice. So they have a lot of really cool stuff. They recently, I want to say last year, although it might have been the year before, I don't know, time dilates, it's weird.
It really did. COVID and all that shit, like, it's just everything backwards.
I think it's a hazard of maybe aging, but at the same time, like, the pandemic really screwed with my temporal reality. But they just released a book by a Hungarian author called The Black Maybe by Attila Veres, which is one of my favorite collections of the most recent years. Just really, really startlingly beautiful writing. Obviously, shout out to the translator, because it was originally written in Hungarian, and I'll never be able to pronounce the translator's name. So if by some random chance they happen to witness this, I apologize, but they did great work. Great work. And I highly recommend to anyone check that collection out who's into some really, really beautiful, odd, cosmic horror, really interesting stuff.
So I love that stuff. Now, I have a question. What did you think of the third Blair Witch? Like, it was like the reboot of Blair Witch. What did you think of that one?
I never saw it. Honestly, the only one I ever saw was the very first one. I couldn't bring myself to watch any of the others.
But the second one was horrible. The second one was absolutely...
Was that the Book of Shadows, I think was what it was called? Yeah. I never saw it.
It was so bad. But the third one, you should watch the third
Okay.
one. The third one was pretty good. It was like a modern spin to the same thing. But the only thing I didn't like about it is that unknown thing. You're like, I wonder what it looks like. You kind of see it, and it
Uh,
kind of takes away from it at the end.
yeah. That's too bad. There is a trope, I believe, of revealing the monster, which does kind of take away from the effect of a horror movie for me. Like, I vastly prefer ambiguity over concrete like imagery, and that again, that's a personal thing. But
I'm gonna tell you what I like to use, but sometimes I like using my imagination. But sometimes I do like to see what or who is, what's the backstory behind it. Sometimes I do like to know what is doing this. Yes,
it's the Scooby Doo thing, pull the mask off and
and
there's the evil real estate
reveal.
mogul. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like part of the mystery for me, I think it. Well, this might be a little bit more on the existential level than I'd like it to be, but part of the grand mystery of life is that we probably never will get an answer to the questions that we have about our own existence. So there is a very real cosmic horror involved in our day-to-day life. So when I watch a horror movie and I'm looking for, examples of that sort of existential horror, it comes in ambiguity, not in reveal, if that makes any sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
most definitely. TJ, where can everyone find you?
Oh, I'm everywhere. I'm on all the sites. I'm on Twitter mostly, although I don't check it as often as I should. And God, I should probably look at all the folks who have followed me recently so that I can follow them back or something. I don't know. But I have a website, tjpricewrites.com. I'm on Discord. Setting up another website for Mandragora Books. I'm on Facebook now as well. God help me. Yeah, I'm in the ether. I'm in the walls. I'm everywhere.
Sweet. One last thing about Blair Witch. I don't know if you're a gamer, but like 2 years ago, the Blair Witch video game came out, and that game is scary as shit, man. It
Really?
is so fucking good. So fucking good.
Is it like an exploration game or?
Yeah, you explore in the woods, and it is so fucking good. Like, you cut the lights off and put the surround sound on it. It was scared the shit out of you. Definitely, I'm gonna give a shout out to the Blair Witch video game. Like, a lot of people don't know about the game, but I think it came out for PlayStation. I want to say it came out for PlayStation and Xbox. I have an Xbox, but I'm pretty sure it came out for both. But yeah, it was a really good time. I don't know why it didn't get that much buzz, but it was a really good game.
Oh, interesting. I'm kind of a weird niche gamer. Like, I do the whole Metroidvania thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the 2D side scrollers with some platforming. Yeah. Like, I'm old school. I have a hard time with 3D. It makes me feel weird. Like, I don't know how to use the controls. If there's too many combos, if it's too many buttons, I'm like, I'm old, man. I just give me like what's that?
Did you like Contra?
I did like Contra. I'm more of a Metroid and like a Castlevania kind of guy. Like,
great.
For example, one of the most recent games the game that I just finished was the new Prince of Persia game, which I loved. It was very fun.
It's great.
Yeah, I really had a good time with it. It was worth the price tag. Lots of, very rewarding platforming. A little easier than I would have liked, and the story was a little whatever. Although, the best game, actually, it's getting up there now. I love Hollow Knight, but Blasphemous has been my go-to game. Blasphemous and its sequel, actually. It is beautiful. The art is fantastic. It's like, think like Spanish Civil War, like Inquisition, but like set in a fantasy world where like it's just soaked in religion, and there's all this like crazy lore going on, and the map is beautiful, and there's so many secrets, and it's a trip, man. I've played both of those games twice. Once in English, and the second time I played it with the original Spanish voice acting, and it's even better that way. I don't know.
See, I have to get back into gaming. It's been about 2 or 3 years. It's been since COVID since I've been playing video games. So like COVID, I was like really back into the video game scene, and then like COVID, I'm like, let me get out and do things. Let me start a YouTube channel. Let me do, yeah.
That's important.
So,
That's definitely important. I mean, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, I wouldn't have like turned onto this whole writing career trajectory because I didn't have any time. Before COVID came down, I was actually working in the neurosurgical operating room at Mount Sinai in New York City.
oh, wow.
It left me no time to do anything at all. It was an incredibly stressful job. And when the pandemic came down, my partner and I actually fled New York City to the relative safety of his parents' beach house in southern North Carolina. And it was March, so it was winter, so the entire community was shut down. They even had like plywood boards up, like so you couldn't get onto the beach, and it was very like eerie and like ghostly and weird. And I didn't really have anything to do, so I just started writing. I actually ended up writing a novel, which is it's a total piece of crap, like just awful, but really really bad. But as a result, then I started reading the short fiction that I mentioned earlier. Started writing my own, got on Discord, and well, fast forward, here we are.
Sweet. Well, originally during COVID, my YouTube channel was going to be giving women advice on how men think in the dating room. Like, that's what my show was originally going to be. And then, like, I was like, but let me not do that because, like, I've seen those shows and, like, men do give women great advice. Like, oh, the man says this. But I feel like a lot of women don't take that advice, or they're like, "Oh my goodness, what does he know? He's a man." Like, listen, men should know what men think. Or all men don't think the same. That's generalization. So, like, I was like, let me not go down that rabbit hole. Let me just stick to horror. It's less confrontational. It's less whatever. Stick to horror.
Well, that's a different kind of horror, I think. I mean, yikes. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, good. I mean, hey, there's a lot to talk about in the realm of horror. There's a lot to talk about, just in terms of all the different ways it can be investigated, in terms of all of the ways it can be portrayed on the page, in movies, everywhere. I like I said earlier, I think it's one of the most universal feelings and reactions that we have to art.
It is, and I don't care what kind of horror you're into. There's so many different subgenres that you can pick from. I mean, you can be found footage. Some people hate found footage, but some people like slashers. Some people like the torture porn. There's something for everyone.
I have I recently published a novelette with Spooky House Press called "The Disappearance of Tom Nero," which is a mixed media presentation. It is ostensibly it's about a young man who goes missing and the efforts of his lover to try and find him. But the only thing he's left behind is his journal. And so the first part of the novelette is actually presented in visual form, as though these are actual pages from his journal, sort of documenting what is the weird stuff that's happening to him as he, keeps going on. Mm-hmm. But then in the second part of the novelette, it switches perspective entirely to something else. It's a story that has been written by his lover who is trying to find him. And then it all kind of ties together. Well, I won't give it away, but in the third part, which changes to a totally different viewpoint from somebody else. So it has a sort of found footagey mixed media quality to it. A lot of people have compared it favorably to House of Leaves, which is huge praise for me because that may be my favorite book of all time.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
I'm happy about that. I follow in its shadow. They're nowhere near the amount of genius that Marcy Januszki had with that book, but it always warms my heart to hear that people who enjoyed that book enjoyed my book as well. So I'm happy about that.
Well, TJ, I'm looking forward to dive into your work, and I don't know if you know or not, but I'm kind of hooked up into the mix with the Psychotoxin Press guys. Chris, Rebecca, all of them, we're on the same team, so I definitely looking forward to working with you as well.
Awesome, likewise, yeah, for sure.
So everybody, listen, look up for my man TJ Price, Psychotoxin Press, and I'm gonna butcher this again, but the Mandragora.
Yeah,
books.
You got it.
Boom.
Bam, just like that.
Boom. Bam. Check it out. Check it out. TJ, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. You're more than welcome to come on anytime.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on, Travis. This was a lot of fun.
Most definitely. All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming to Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.